Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, we do have a number of you coming. It's a massive virtual lunch show, so welcome. We'll allow everybody another 30 seconds or 60 seconds to come in while Colin and I just banter, and people probably joining us now probably know Wayne Smith as well. I still remember, it's a funny thing, we swapped a couple of messages only a couple of weeks ago talking about the start of Xero. You know, I suppose it goes back a number of years now, and have a look what they've achieved. And I still remember one of our accountants, I don't know if she's online today, I can remember saying to me, "Hey PJ, do you think Xero is a good buy at $11? I don't know what they're trading at now, but it was a good buy, no doubt about that. So fantastic. What are we up to in our numbers? Let's have a look. Yes, it's punching up, which is good. Okay, we've got a lot of firms joining us today, so we'll give them another 30 seconds to jump in. More than likely that will go up when it started as well, and then I'll stop sharing my screen and we will get into today's virtual lunch. Couple of things just to share with everybody. If you don't know who I am, my name is Paul Jantz. These wonderful lunches is to grab a beer, grab a glass of wine. I've got my wine. I was, unfortunately, I tested positive yesterday to COVID, so I'm not 100%. I'm well drugged up. I have my wine, and if I do happen to switch off my screen for whatever reason, you probably know that I've got a few issues going on here. So, but I'm going to push on, and we will get through the next hour because it is we've got some fantastic things to share. Look, I was lucky enough, probably maybe 12 months ago, Colin. I interviewed Colin for the podcast Talking Numbers that I run, and it's the information. And there's another gentleman called Warwick Cavell who also knows Colin quite well, and the way that sort of Warwick speaks about Colin, he gives him sort of a lot of praise. And when we did the podcast, there was so much information I wanted to delve into, and I did, but there was so much more I wanted to go through. So I've asked Colin to come back. This is our first virtual lunch for the year, which is exciting for us for 2022. You know, and we're going to go into our topic today of how you create value, but more importantly, let me stop sharing this screen. How you create value, how you plan for succession. And I know for, you know, being in the industry for as long as what I have, and if I go back to some of our coaching days back in 2004, I suppose, when I started GPL, and a lot of firms back then wanted to talk to us how I prepare for sale, how do I create greater, you know, back then 70 cents in the dollar, 80 cents in the dollar, there was always a bit of a starting platform. You start at a dollar for dollar and you sort of start that negotiation. And some of the great things that Colin's done, he's getting up closer to $1.40 in the dollar, which I'm sure all of you guys would love to know about. And that's what today's about. So stick with us. We've got some fairly deep questions to go through. Just on that note, if you wanted to use the chat bar's there, so please chat away. If you want to use the Q&A, we've got time at the end of the session or throughout. I'll check it throughout, where you can ask questions throughout the whole session. So please ask questions and I'll check through everything what's going on as well. Colin Simkin, welcome. How are you?
Oh, great to be involved. I'm well. Dare I say it, I'm slightly better than you at the moment, but I kind of think I view it that I'm in the queue, and you've got it yesterday or today, and dare I say it, I'll get it in a few weeks' time. But good to be with you, mate. Now, you will excuse me. It's only 11 a.m. in my world because I'm up in Queensland. But so I'm on the waters, not a wine or a beer. My go-to is a single malt, so probably a bit early for a single malt. But there you go.
Very true. Well, you know, it's 12 o'clock everywhere else, and we come on to your time, I think in about 2 weeks' time. We lose our daylight savings, so which is always good to get us back on the same time zone. Colin, let's start with a little bit about you. For people that may not know you, may not know about the ATL Network, obviously I've known about you and I've been to a couple of your conferences. You do some fantastic things. Tell us a little bit about you and, you know, your knowledge and experience within the industry.
Yeah, I guess happy to do so. albeit I hope I don't bore people. So qualifications, MBA and bachelors and various diplomas and whatnot, all that in place. From a career standpoint, I kind of see my career in sort of two halves, right? So some of the listeners would know a group that previously, I guess, held some sort of positioning in the market with accountants called Count Wealth Accountants. I was with Count for the better part of 20 years. Dare I say, I probably grew up in that business. It was a terrific business to be involved in, and we worked with circa 400 or 500 accounting firms around Australia. I had a national role as senior exec in that business, and built some brilliant relationships with some fantastic firms around the country, and I guess and learned a lot and through that journey. And through that journey, there were different times when we were assisting firms with succession initiatives. There was a listing that we did do, which is still listed today, Count Plus. But in, I think, 2011, 2012, CBA bought out Count. I left the business at that time, and effectively went off and started my own business, which is ATL Network. I own the business, run the business. I have other staff in the background that do stuff, but I guess if you are dealing with ATL, you're more likely to be dealing directly with myself. And today we specialise in succession solutions for accountants. Our website, if I can give it a little plug, practicesuccession.com. That's the website. If you haven't had a look at it and you've got an eye for succession, there are some just terrific resources on there for practitioners who are going down this path.
I just realised I reached over and just subconsciously picked up a glass of wine and took a sip. I'm on all sorts of drugs, and I've just reached over and grabbed the wine first of all. So we're going to drink through this.
Should make for a fun hour, Paul.
Stick with this, especially if you're watching this. So, Colin, you just mentioned, which is great, your experience through Count Wealth and obviously Count Plus. And so back then, what year was that? Because it's a bit of a blur now, but I know when you guys at the time sold, and obviously Barry did very well out of that. That was an interesting multiple at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, that did do very well. So CBA bought Count. I think it was around that 2011-12. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
So, a good time ago now.
Yeah, and look, I think that's we're talking about that's a similar sort of succession path that you guys went on, and Count Plus, and it's still listed today, isn't it, Count Plus?
That's right. Yeah.
So and this is probably the discussion. So what made you get into the brokering market? What do you see in terms of, call it brokering, succession? But that's the path you've been on now for a while.
It was interesting, I guess, having in the whole Count environment as I was for a significant period. There was, dare I say it, there was a degree of grey hair and receding hairlines in the room, which we're all still part of our journey, right? And clearly, as I mentioned, I was having discussions with different firms around that. When I left, I kind of reflecting on what my next step would be, and did some research on the marketplace, delved fairly deeply into those good old baby boomer sector that's in the marketplace. I went over states and did some study in the succession space, and then and that's where I've operate today, and specialising with accountants. Love what I do, and just enjoy working with and guiding firms through that succession journey. It's there's pitfalls and whatnot, and I'm sure we'll chat about some of them later. But done well, it can be just a great outcome for the parties going that are, I guess, leaving the industry, and making sure that the legacy that they've built is able to be sustained and maintained, and that's that where it's done well, that can be achieved, I think.
Yeah, I think the conversation that we had a few weeks ago when we were talking about this was that, you know, firms that are coming available or on the market, they're being snapped up pretty quickly. And I know even some of the firms that we're working with as well, currently working with, is similar. They're looking to acquire some firms, but yeah, they're going pretty quickly. So what are you seeing in the marketplace at the moment? Are you seeing a buyer's market, seller's market? Where does the market sit in March 2022?
Yeah, without question, it's a very much a seller's market. A little story, I guess. If I took a practice to market, a capital city practice, if I can preface it, but it wouldn't be uncommon for me to receive 40, 50, 60 and above parties who are interested in viewing that opportunity. Those that do so, they'll sign a confidentiality with me and then receive a fairly detailed information memorandum. That's a report that's typically 30, 40 pages in length and provides a really good, fairly good comprehensive analysis of the practice that I'm working with. And then from that level of interest, if we receive 10, 15, even up to 20 non-binding written offers, again, not uncommon. And of course, when you have those outcomes for the vendor, for the seller, they have great choice. And the most critical component of any succession is making sure that the fit is right.
Yes. And
of course, where you've got choice and options, you can work towards getting the best fit as you possibly can, and that's typically what we achieve. But that's to give you some insight in terms, I guess, from a practical insight. It very much is a seller's market. On my database, I have over 1,000 registered buyers around the country, but so there's a lot of interest in acquisition.
Wow, and that's great. So look, I suppose for all of the firms that are joining us today, this is a good path, because I suppose when I think about going into business, and there's been a number of businesses that I've been involved in, we always, I suppose, as Stephen Covey used to say, begin with the end in mind. So
yes.
Therefore, yes, we're going to business to one day realise that value and sell that and move on to something new. What do you think in terms of, the let's call it the different types of formulas that are out there? You just mentioned
yes.
You might have, close to 50 or 60, call it people of interest.
Yes.
Pure economics tells you that, that the increase in the value increases based on, what's in the marketplace, and pure scarcity can force prices up. Is that something, again, you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where there's demand, I guess,
yeah.
Back in my 101 university days, economics, demand and supply, right? We can never forget those demand supply curves, right? Well, this is no different, and there is I think a strong appetite for acquisition of good quality accounting firms in the marketplace. I'm talking to buyers every day who've got a real strong appetite for acquisition. But to speak to your point around values and what have you, I mean, there are many things that will determine value, right? At the heart of it is the profitability of a business, its turnover, its revenues, having that sustained financial performance, and geographical location is oddly enough a really important. I mean, that comes back to that supply and demand issue, I guess. But those are four, I think, really important characteristics. The profitability, if I drilled into that for a moment, firms that are typically under $1 million in fees, typically they will sell for the market valuation will be based on the top line. It'll be based on cents in the dollar. And even if it is to be based on the bottom line profitability, typically there will be a correlation. Firms that are over $1 million, then if their profitability, if their EBITDA is more than 25% of turnover, then, and that's after market salaries for partners, principals,
yep.
Then you're talking sort of multiples of profit, and the various sort of valuation models, I guess. But I'll come back to that in a moment. But under cents in the dollar, as a range, comfortably between $1 and $1.30, very, very comfortable. And again, all the different factors that make a good business versus less attractive business will come into play. But those items I tabled, the profitability of the business, the turnover, the sustained financial performance, and geographical location are pretty central to determining value. For firms over that, if you're a well-run, profitable firm, and you're over that mil turnover, and you're more than that 25% profit ratio, then multiples of 4 to 5 times, more than 5 times, 6 times, and I've seen that. And to be fair, I've seen over 6 times. So these are all certainly possible as you sort of progress down this pathway.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, to all of you guys that are online right now, as we're going through this, I'm writing down questions myself to come back and talk to Colin about. Well, when we're going to work through a number of key things, and even things like the fit. And the one thing that I've got that I wrote down just then, are you seeing a huge difference in, let's call it, market salaries to, let's say, regional or sort of metro firms? You talk about the geo being important. Where do you see? Because I think, I know the one thing when we used to coach a lot of accounting firms was, well, what is market salary? What do we determine is it 180? Is it 250?
Yeah, look, there's some good research out in the marketplace. I'll often utilise the Hayes salary guides as a good reference. It's available to all of us, and it's a good source. And typically that how I would view it, when you have a look at the guide, it's pretty much par for par. So circa 180, 200K for a inner city practitioner, a regional firm, partners, principals in regional firms will be less. And I guess depending on sort of how regional those firms are, we'll sort of bring that back a bit. But yeah, there certainly is a difference between regional salaries and metro city salaries.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it, when you think about, you just mentioned Hayes and the Hayes salary surveys. I nearly had a bit of a laugh thinking, are they still around? Are they still doing this after 30 years, which is quite incredible?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good resource. So it's a good reference point for those that perhaps are considering going down this path.
100%. And it's also quite an independent sort of study. I know the CAANZ do theirs as well. So there's a few different resources out there, aren't there?
Correct. And I overlay that with my own, as I work through with a whole range of different firms around the country. They all table their salaries and remuneration to the staff and partners and what have you. And so that itself provides an interesting sort of a bank of data and research. But ultimately, all roads do align. Yeah.
Do you see that? And I suppose, again, maybe a naive question, but do you see that, let's say, whether they're SME clients or individuals, or even, I know a number of firms that are purely focused on self-managed super funds, and they've got 200, 300, 400 different super funds, knowing that the average price, we know where that can be. We know the cost to do that now can be a set fee, depending on whether you're using internally or whether you're externally outsourcing. So there's some really good margins there. Would you say we just come back down to an EBITDA which balances out, or do you think you can easily separate between, so to give everyone a bit of an idea of where I'm going here is, if you were planning for future succession and you were sitting there with your business model today and saying, well, I'm highly geared towards SMEs, and I know my SMEs, look, I might make $1,000 per company as an example, or trust, but I can make a 50% margin on a self-managed super fund. So should I move towards more of that market, which I know is going to give me a higher return on investment in the future?
Yeah, great question, Paul. I think as one is going through succession, one of the things I'm extremely mindful of as practitioners going through their succession, they're running their business, and I haven't come across an accountant yet that's not busy and not busy all year round, and short staffed and all these sorts of good things. But you're running your business. So as you go through your succession journey, and I guess you're speaking to perhaps the process of preparing your business for succession, which is a great idea. But the reality is there are limits on what you can do and the amount of things you can do and how you can adjust your business. And I'll touch on some of the things that I think are pertinent a little bit later. But to speak to your question about, what type of fees are more valuable than others, as a general guide, I think SMEs would be considered more valuable than I returns, from the perspective that typically firms that service the SME market, I guess they provide more value. They do it in a way that's perhaps more profitable, and ultimately, when it gets the tin tax of it, the profitability drives it, right? Now, are there firms out there that work in the I return space and do it incredibly efficiently and generate terrific profits? I'm sure there are, right? But as a general rule of the firms that I see and work with on a daily basis, those that have the focus on the SME space are typically more profitable, but also from a market demand, there is more demand for firms with looking after the business client rather than the individuals. That's the first point. If a firm's got self-managed super funds, that's absolutely attractive. It's the ability to change a mix of business and go from 100 SMEs to 300 SMEs. That's a life's work. You might add 10, you might add 20. So I think one has to be realistic in terms of what can truly be achieved. Chances are, if you've set your and often the SMEs, of course, they go, if you've got self-managed super funds, they often will go hand in hand with business clients in a lot of times in any respect. But yeah, so hopefully that sort of addresses some of the points you've asked, Paul. But that's
for sure.
That's what I see.
And do you find or have you experienced, again, I know firms that have specifically got into specific industries, so let's say the dental industry. Knowing that they are well resourced, they make a lot of money. Individual dentists can also make a lot of money as an individual. There is a company trust, obviously self-managed super fund. So that one client could be quite profitable.
Absolutely.
People that are industry specific can also demand a greater value.
Yes, to a point. I guess again, it comes back to a little bit. I mean, again, I'm labouring on it, I know, but ultimately it comes down to the profitability of the business.
Okay.
Is my overarching guiding factor, right? if you looked at the demand supply curves and looked at the market, are there more firms that operate in the specialised space, looking after doctors and dentists versus the amount of firms that look after just general mums and dads and businesses? Well, the answer is clearly general mums and dads and businesses. So, if you've got a well-run, profitable business, through succession, you'll get rewarded. Now, if specialisation allows you to be more efficient and more focused and ultimately, provide better value to clients, which leads to better financial outcomes, then that's a great thing. But in itself, having a specialisation, will that in itself lead to a better outcome from a succession perspective? I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So let's get into probably two key areas. What should firms be striving to achieve? So we've spoken about quite a few there, and I've got one that I want to come back to, and there's a question up there as well that I'll come back to as well. But what should firms be striving towards if they're looking at this succession plan? And what sort of time frame would you suggest? Let's say if they're starting today, we're sitting here in March, and as ridiculous it is, we had Christmas, it feels like it was yesterday. But more importantly, we're going to be starting a new financial very soon as well, which sounds just as ridiculous. And I'm sure to all you guys that have got so much work to do, it is ridiculous. Yeah. But it's reality. What should firms be striving towards?
Yeah, so I'll give my I'm going to give my website a shameless plug, Paul.
Sure.
But on my website, for those that are interested, they can get access to a report called a practice succession report. And depending on what your timeframes are, there's two different reports, and they outline a framework and a strategy for your succession, and they're a great resource. And what I'm going to speak to now will kind of circle back to those reports. But I think there's kind of, as you go through your succession, there's three kind of phases of your succession. There's the phase of which you've touched on a moment ago, is becoming ready. Now, for some firms, that might be a zero time frame. Like, my firm is what my firm is. I'm moving into the next phase. Okay, but for those that have got time, I think if you can plan and prepare, you'll achieve a far better outcome. Whether that's 12 months, whether that's 2 years, whether it's 3 years, whether it's 5 years, whatever it is, and maybe it's 10 years. But the more you can be preparing for that, those reports that I mentioned, they provide a number of different initiatives, depending on how much time you have. But they speak to a number of different initiatives which can significantly add value to your end outcome. So stage one, becoming succession ready, as long as you wish it to be. Stage two is identifying who your successor is. Now, if your successor is coming from internally, you've probably been growing them, nurturing them. It's probably part of a longer term plan that you have. And when it comes to actually doing something, maybe it can take 6 to 12 months to actually get something formally documented. And I've seen that on numerous occasions. There's a lot to work through. People not to be rushed. It's but going through that process with internal people, 6 to 12 months. Conversely, if you are going outside of your practice because you don't have an internal successor and there's reasons why you wish to take your practice to market, then a 12-month time frame is entirely reasonable to find and identify the right successor to take over your business. It can happen sooner, but 12 months is a reasonable guide. And then the next stage, and the third and final stage, is the transition once a deal has been consummated, the handing over of those client relationships, handing over the control to whoever takes over your business. 12 months, reasonable time frame. Could be longer. I would very much counsel against it being shorter. I don't think that's in parties' interest. And typically the clients that I work with, getting back to what they want from their succession, they want there's the financial aspect of it. Everybody gets that. But typically the firms that I work with have got a strong interest in making sure their clients are looked after, that they have looked after successfully for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So being involved in that transition will certainly go a long way to ensuring that their valued clients are continually being looked after, provided the fit is right, of course, which again, when you've got choice and options, you can achieve that outcome. And staff, and making sure staff are all looked after through that process as well. And so there's some of the things that, so the 3 phases: stage 1, succession ready. 12 months is a reasonable guide. Could be 3 years, could be 5, could be 10. Stage 2, 12 months, 6 to 12 months is a reasonable time frame for finding that right fit for your practice. And then stage 3, that transition phase, again, 12 months. So all in all, if I'm contemplating succession today, and I'm at the very starting line of contemplating becoming ready, minimum, perhaps it's a 3-year journey. And at the end of the 3-year journey, I refer to you being financially out of your practice, out of the business. But, it could be a lot longer than that as well.
Yeah, well said. And I suppose and I wrote down a couple of things, and I think you mentioned them in terms of the transition is just so important in terms of clients and staff. And you're right, they're the 2 things that certainly.
Can I mention a point on that? So one of and it kind of all these different areas overlay, but one of the areas for clients that I'm working with, and this resource is available on my website, but I think one of the really powerful resources that one of the challenges practices have all around the country is they retain a lot of information about their clients that is all upstairs but not documented anywhere. All the financial aspects of clients' affairs, of course, all documented, and firms will have great file notes and what have you, and immaculate files and whatnot as they go through due diligence. But the subtleties of who are the key decision makers in a business? What's been the experiences of that business owner in terms of their commercial activities? Who do they know in your client base? What are their relationships? There's a whole raft of who are their external advisors. There's a whole raft of information that you and your team probably know about your clients, but it's not documented. So one of the things that I recommend for my clients is that they start to work and prepare what I call client dossiers. So these client dossiers, they're a 1 to 2 page summary of various aspects about a client that is not currently in their client file. And so I say to my clients, look, for your top 25 family groups, that have got a company, a super fund, a trust, individuals, a whole range of different. For your most important clients, document these client dossiers. Spend 45 minutes on a Monday morning and just do a brain dump and make notes. And then a couple of weeks time, come back and do another one. But on my website, I've got a template of different things that you consider as to what you would put into these client dossiers. But let me tell you, these client dossiers have done well. They are invaluable for the very point that you raise in terms of that transition. Having that information, and obviously that's sensitive information that's bound up in the confidential relationship between the practitioner and their client, but information that will aid the future servicing of clients. It is invaluable and really will go to really dramatically assist in that transition for whoever takes over your practice.
Brilliant. So just to I was about to type it out, but I wanted to check first. Is it practicesuccession.com.au?
Just practicesuccession.com.
So I'm going to put that into the comments right now, practicesuccession.com. So check that out. There seems to be, Colin seems to have a whole host of fantastic templates and resources there. So go and check that out. That is something. But I think the dossier, and I know we delved into this in the Talking Numbers podcast, and invaluable to know how important that is, because that information, you're right, is up here.
It's a little thing, right? It's a little things that matter, as they say. And this is one of these things that can have an immeasurable and significant impact on that transition phase of your succession. But it's something that you can do. It's something that you're not going to spend a month doing, but you can do it over 12 months. You can chip away, do a client group a week or a fortnight, what have you. And as a resource going through this process, invaluable.
Brilliant, mate. So what are you seeing in terms of, let's talk about what not to do, or what devalues a firm, I suppose. Are there things that you can share with everyone online today?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the mistakes, I guess, here I say it's going to sound trite, but not being prepared, right? I'll tell you a very quick story. A couple of years ago, there was a regional practitioner was seeking counsel from me. Wasn't a client, but I was very happy to kind of assist him where I could. He was going through his succession. He was going through the process internally. So in this one example, this guy went through this process, negotiated it with the staff. It all went bad. The staff member, so the deal didn't go through, but worse than that, what happened was that the staff member who was taken down this process, they got so cheesed off with the process, they left the firm. So this practitioner not only didn't get the internal succession that they'd been working towards, they lost a key and valued team member, right? So that's disaster number one. Number two, there was another practitioner that was seeking, just chatting again, not a client, but was going through their own succession. They were negotiating with an individual employee. They ended up doing a deal on 80 cents in the dollar. I know that if I would have taken that practice to market, I would have got $1.10. I'll be conservative, $1.10, right? 30 cents in the dollar. It was that was probably equated to about $250,000, right? And as he went through, this internal successor was the business was heavily reliant on this person, and so in the end, it was kind of, well, if you don't accept my deal, I'm going. The vendor was kind of put over a barrel, and it's just not right. But look, in the end, he agreed to it and went down that path. But there's ways to go about these things, and that was not a great outcome. Either of those examples, I guess, are examples of just how things can go wrong, right? Yeah. So preparation is the key, and obviously, dare I say it, getting the right advice as you go through it. In terms of, we've touched on it a couple of times, but that becoming succession ready, really critical. Speaks to the getting prepared, but spend time preparing your business. And again, the reports on a website that I touched on, they touch on some simple things, but again, will have an invaluable impact on so things like having excessive cash lockup, dealing with your WIP and debtors. That's if you've got high levels of WIP, high levels of debtors, which I have seen too many examples of over my journey, and it's just a real red flag to potential buyers. If you've got say excessive leave build up in your practice with staff, again, that's probably not good for the staff members themselves that they haven't taken leave through the process, but also why is it that your business is needing to be run this way, that staff aren't taking appropriate leave and breaks from the business? So having built up leave is a real problem. But also, someone takes over and a staff member on day one says, okay, I'd like to take 2 months leave now, thanks. That's not ideal, right? Again, dealing with these types of things from a financial perspective is an ideal thing. Know what your practice is worth. Seek advice and get an understanding of what is the real value of your business. And it may well be that if you go down an internal succession path, typically that pathway you won't get the highest financial outcome, but it will probably be the smoothest transition, because typically the person that you've identified is known to all your clients, known to all your staff, and probably, dare I say it, probably before you've consummated that deal, all those that are around you probably have said, oh yeah, Bill, Mary, Fred, Jane is going to be taking over, right? But know the value and understand what you want. If you're going to externally, then make sure you have an IM that is prepared really thoroughly on your business. And this is really important because that IM should be a true and fair representation of your business, obviously, but it should have everything in there. If people go through due diligence and discover issues about your practice, that will only lead to a bad outcome. And that bad outcome simply might be a reduction in an offer price that was previously tabled. To me, that is not a great outcome. Or it could be simply people walking away from the deal because what they thought it was going to be and what they found are now two different things. Yep. So be upfront in your preparation, in the way you present your business. How can I put it? Don't take a tired business to market. A business that's performing well financially, that's got engaged, professional, happy staff. We've got clients that have got long tenure. There's not turnover and churn with clients. These are the things that speak to a well-run and good business, and that's the type of business that parties want to buy.
And I think that's always the challenge, I suppose. If you've got a well-run business, if you've got good people, if you've got good clients, if you're making good money, why do you want to sell? That sometimes comes into that process. Do I want to sell at the height, or as exactly what you said, do you want to sell when it's low? So I think that's an important question that sometimes all you guys might have to ask yourselves in terms of, when do I want to realize the value, the maximum type of value that I can receive for my accounting firm? And I'm not suggesting anyone should sell, but it is something that you should consider in terms of, if you're doing well and you're happy and you're pulling in 200 grand and there's another profit of 300 and 400 grand, well, do you need to? And that's an important point, because the one that you mentioned before that I wrote down was around people. And people, most of us want security. Okay, most of us want to know that if you are going down the road of selling, that will my job be safe? I have a family, I've got 3 boys, I've got all this to pay for, and is my employment going to be secure? So at which stage do you share that with team members, that that's what you're considering? Do you have a strategic planning day and say to the team, guys, in 3 years' time, this is what we're planning to do? What's your experience on that?
Yeah, again, another great question, I guess, because there's a lot into that. And is there a right and wrong answer? I think there is. So if your succession is ultimately about you retiring, right? So which will typically be a function on age, right? You're in your 60s or whatever the case may be, and you wish to retire, and that's the catalyst for this succession event. Then guess what? Everybody knows you're getting older. Is probably the reality. So, I've worked with practitioners which have openly said to their staff a number of years before, when we get to the point that we want to go through a succession, we will be looking to sell the business, merging the business with another firm or practice or industry participant. But what will be critical to our decision is to ensuring you are all looked after and our clients are looked after, because this is the legacy of what we've built over 40 years, 30 years, what have you. And that's a good message to, if it's true, that's a great message to give to your staff, because staff are smart. They know that, if you're of an age, then something is on the horizon, then and people want to know, as you say, speaking to that security and of your environment, making sure you're going to be looked after. It's good to hear that. When you are actually going through this process, my strongest advice to my clients is, unless you've got something to tell your team, you don't tell them anything, because deals don't always happen. They don't always go through. And to create an expectation with your staff, to create perhaps a level of uncertainty with your staff, because they're not sure what the next month brings, because it's going to be new or different.
Yes.
Only for that not to eventuate, I don't think that's doing anybody any favours. So until you've actually, if you are going down this process in actively seeking a successor for your practice, then I would not be making that, broadcasting that to the world, and say, until you have something to say, and you'll only have something to say once a deal is done, and you're beyond that point of no return, if that makes sense.
Okay. And I think that's an important one. So I think, that sort of lies the sometimes call it the challenge with a lot of the firms out there, because they want to go down that road. They want to share it with their people, or sometimes they're scared to, because how open can they be, especially, firms that are proactively having planning days. And, when I was doing my coaching, we always did it every year, and we did it half yearly as well. And we did it with the partners, and then we brought in the team members. So everyone was on the same page, and we wanted to make sure that communication was really clear, because it's the old scenario of what people don't know, they tend to sort of make up. And then you've got this Chinese whispers goes around, oh, well, I heard PJ was selling his firm, or PJ's looking to sell his firm. And it's like, so there's always that hard bit of what I do communicate, especially if it's within your values, of saying, let's have open and honest communication. And I want to let you guys know everything. So it is a challenge. And I know it's hard for you guys that are listening to this, because personally, I've been in the boardroom where you've been there, and we've spoken to team members. Then on the other side, I've had team members say, yeah, but why didn't they just tell us? We've always had open communication, but they didn't tell us.
Yeah, so, I think, Paul, again, if it is one of your mandates that your team will be looked after through any succession event, then that is a continuous message that you can reinforce, and a good message, and a very positive message, provided it is true. Yes. Unfortunately, I have seen some parties that haven't had that as the forefront of their thinking as they've gone through their succession. And so, as I say, if it's true, then share it. Yes.
And I think it's, given today's market, well, let's talk at people market as well, where good people are in such a high demand. You've only got to look at 100%. LinkedIn to see how many of the firms you're connected with are searching for senior accountants. It's just ridiculous.
If you've got good people that you've invested in, you've developed, you've trained, they're deeply engaged in the business, they care about your clients, and they're great resources and great assets in your business, yes. Then those people will be just so welcomed in the next environment. Yes. Again, provided the fit is good, but the fit will be good, because you'll have selected whoever's going to take over and fulfill your role in the business and the ownership of your business, because you're the right fit for your staff, you're the right fit for your clients.
Okay, good. So, mate, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to come to questions very soon. So if you've got questions, throw them into the Q&A, please. I know there's a few in the chat bar as well that I'll come to very soon. So let's bring this back down. We've gone through a lot. Are there 4 or 5 different things that firms can start considering now in terms of that succession? Because I know and I've written down quite a lot as well, and hopefully all of you guys have taken notes.
So, again, what are the small wins, right? What are the small as you're going along? So one of the things I often see, your price model, right? When was the last time you increased your fees? I know some firms will increase their fees on an annual basis. I know some firms, you go in and they haven't increased their fees for 5 years. Increase your fees, make sure they're market competitive. So if you haven't increased your fees, for 3 years, do it now, right? Do it now. Get a little bit of uplift over the next 12 months or so, or whatever the period is, but do it now. So your price model is an easy one. Your office lease. If you lease your office space, and again, this is a bit time is your friend here. If you can plan so that your lease finishes when your transition period finishes, and whoever takes over your practice, if it's external, remains in your current location through the transition period, then that will work to everybody's advantage, both buyer and seller. And if there's options that that your successor can take up, then that's a beautiful thing. Then they've got the choice whether they want to remain in your current location or in fact move it, and that will be their choice. So the office lease is a good one if you can align your stars to your timetable. The client dossier is I mentioned that one previously, but it's a simple one but really powerful. Employee agreements, employee leave entitlements. If you haven't got agreements in place, make sure that they're in place. Like do it today, not next week, today. If you don't have employment agreements in place, deal with it today. And if you've got excessive leave entitlements, start managing that and work through that with your team. A couple of other areas. If you've got an aged client base. Now, if somebody is going through this process and retirement is the next step for them, then it is highly likely and highly probable that you'll have an aged client base, and an average aged client base of firms going through this process, 55, 56, 57, 54, in that range, it's common. It's common that the average age of a client base will be in this realm. The issues are, of course, when your clients in their 60s and the other side of 65, what's the sustainability of those clients? Particularly if you're working with business clients. And so do some analysis on it first. Find out where you sit. And this comes back to, in your IM, being upfront with all the information, right? But if you've got clients that are of an older age relative to others, then are there risks there? Are there risks there for the sustainability of clients? Now, if you've done succession planning in your practice with those clients and you are now working with the next generation, then maybe there is no risks. But on the surface, if you've got a client that's got fees of 22 grand a year and they're age 64, then maybe that's an alarm bell for me if I don't have the full picture. So understand what that full picture looks like. Do some analysis on your age. And the other one, perhaps, Paul, I mentioned before, is cash lockup. Get your debtors and get your WIP down to 30 days. In 2022, firms can still be operating, as effectively their bank for their client. Those days are long gone. Correct. Those days are long gone. But again, you're not changing the world here. Small changes. So if you can bring it, if you're 60 days and you bring it back to 40, do that. But they're half a dozen small wins that you can action, and they will have real impact on your succession outcome.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, I wrote down quite a few there. So I think there's been invaluable notes for everybody here to, if you're in that space, apart from what's on Colin's website as well. So please check that out. Two things that I've got, and there's some questions coming through. So to all of you that don't know what an IM is, it's an information memorandum. So Colin, is that something you help firms with?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I'm acting firms, I build that. As I say, the IMs that I build, they're typically 30, 40 pages. I drive my clients mad, but it's all for a really good outcome, good reason, good outcome. And you do that well, that is a great platform to start a very successful succession journey.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think those of you that have may been through selling, mergers, acquisitions, whatever it may be, or even raising capital as an example, an information memorandum has been something that there's got everything that is in there. It's not a PDS as such, but it's an information memorandum. So, which is brilliant.
If I can just,
so do you see that? Sure.
Sorry. With that succession report that I mentioned is on my website. One of the things that we haven't really touched on, but it's really important, and it's kind of contained in that report. One of the things I see with practitioners is, as you're contemplating succession, I strongly recommend you also contemplate what your life is going to be about, what your world is going to be like when you're no longer involved in your business. And it's it's one of those big picture questions of life. But in that practice succession report that I speak to, it walks you through and starts you thinking, because that's what I want you to do. I want you to start thinking about your life when you're no longer involved in your business. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important. So that's a really critical thing. There's a whole succession plan and actions in those reports. And then there's the third thing is that there's a really comprehensive due diligence checklist. And I would recommend you put your business through that due diligence checklist. If you in the process of getting yourself ready, have you got all the necessary information available, and how would it be viewed from the eyes of a buyer? It's so the three really important things that are all contained in that practice succession report that you might like to have a look at.
Yeah, brilliant. Well done, mate. Thank you very much. So check that out, people. Let me just, mate, there's a question that came through before in terms of what about business advisory? Does business advisory, again, it's another division of revenue, so it's just
look, it's you do it well. It adds great profits. If you've got your team going down the path of business advisory, and they're asking all the right questions to your clients, to your SMEs about their future, their business, their succession, and you have that as a service. I think it really differentiates you in the market, probably significantly adding to the value you're bringing to your clients, but also, if it's done right, can certainly significantly add to your bottom line profitability.
Yeah, brilliant. Question: Have you had experience with, let's call it, any type of software, or for firms that are looking to acquire clients but not necessarily purchase them, but from a growth point of view? Have you had any experience with any type of, let's call it marketing? We go out there traditionally and market ourselves, and we pick up new clients.
Yes.
Have you had any experience with any type of company software that can do that? Because I've got one.
What one are you thinking about?
The one that I've had experiences with is called Bark, B-A-R-K.
Yeah,
so check that out for all of you that may be interested. There's the old Google AdWords. There's making sure you've got Google reviews. These are just some simple things that you guys can start doing as well. So if someone's going to look at you from a new client point of view, and the first thing everyone does nowadays is goes to Dr. Google. So we go to Google and we do our searches. Ask yourself, or go and have a look at your Google search yourself and see if you've got reviews. If you haven't got reviews, go and ask clients to provide you with reviews. It takes 3 seconds. You get them up there. People are looking for 4 or 5 stars. They're looking for 5-star reviews. Okay, so and ideally no negative feedback. So check that out. Bark is, I've seen that being used for a number of different sorts of businesses. One that I sit on the advisory board for one of the financial advisors. So they use Bark a lot and call it the return on investment is actually very, very good. So, if you're paying $20 a client as an example, or even $100 a client, and that client is worth $5,000, well, I think you'd continue to do it. So as long as you can measure your activity to those sorts of things as well, always make sure you look at that and make sure you are getting that ROI, not just spending it and then hopefully something's going to come in. So this is where you've got to stay on top of your business if you want to grow your top line, like what Colin said before as well. There's no doubt it will grow your top and bottom line. That's a couple of there. Then just mentioned try to download the report from your website and the page is not redirecting. So we might have a look at that one. So Cole, I'll get you to have a look at that one anyway, mate.
No, Matt, if Ben wants to send me his emails, my email is colin.simkin@atlnetwork.com.au. If he wants to send me an email, I'll sort that out. But
brilliant. So get in touch with Colin directly or hit him up on LinkedIn. Guys, it's just hit 1 o'clock. So Colin, is there anything just in terms of closing you'd like to share?
No, I think we've covered a great deal.
Yeah, we have.
Look, if anybody wants to have a private, confidential conversation, happy to do so. There's on the website you can set up a Zoom meeting, and happy to have half an hour confidential discussion about what your plans are and any advice I can provide. Happy to do so.
Magnificent. Well, mate, thank you. It's been a wonderful 60 minutes. I'm not quite sure how I've lasted. Maybe it's because of the red wine. But it really has been fantastic with so much information shared there. So to all of you that are online, thanks for joining us. So hopefully that provided you with a really good insights and really good notes to start working on a framework. Jump on the website, hit up Colin either on email or on LinkedIn, and he'd be more than happy to have a chat to you. To all of you that are listening as well and watching this right now, I'm starting a new Accountants Empire Masterclass CEO series. So as a part of the educational process that I'm continuing to work through and providing more to our industry, certainly from call it a non-technical CBD point of view, I'm starting a CEO series. So check it out. It's probably, you might have an invitation in your inbox. It is, I'm interviewing my first guest is the CEO, Chief Executive from Reckon, Sam Allett, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of things to do with leadership. So he obviously leads a publicly listed company. So we'll be talking about strategy, execution, resilience, teamwork, coaching, failures, leadership, control, listening or talking. We're going to be talking about a whole host of things. It's kicking off next week. It's a monthly show. So please stick with us and hopefully you can join us for that as well and get team members on board. If you've got future leaders which can add value to your future value of your business, please get them on board as well. Colin, thanks again, mate. Thanks again. I don't know how I've lasted, but I have. I only went off screen a couple of times, which was good. So, but thanks again for joining us. And to all of you, thanks and enjoy the rest of your week.
Brilliant, Paul. I look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, mate. See you in Melbourne.
Bye.